Hey, look which one I got. Hey, what I got. Here, Elizabeth, go choose a pretty color that you like.
Thanks a lot for the introduction. Um, and thank you everyone for taking out time today to attend this session. Well, I would just like to start first where how I started this journey. Way back when I was in college, I used to take nature tours. And that's when once there was an inquiry to take a tour to Bhima Shankar Wildlife Sanctuary of a group of blind children. And I was really reluctant in the sense if I was capable of leading them to that tour. And then it finally happened. We went to the forest. And believe me, they were much, much better than me. I fell down a couple of times. They were the ones who picked me up. They remembered the way back to the bus. They were very observant. And that's when, I really kind of, I was very excited the way all of us with different abilities, we engage with nature differently, I think. And nature is that way a common platform for engaging. Similarly, when I was working at CAS, I realized that many of our spaces, even though they're natural spaces, I feel that they can be made more inclusive, like the kind of pathways we have. They are not always accessible to people with special needs. Today, I'll be sharing with you of my personal journey of this place called Udaan Biodiversity Park in Pune. So it's a park which is a Pune Municipal Corporation. So it's a public garden and it's being developed by Zensar. And Zensar is part of the RPG group of companies. So RPG Foundation is maintaining it right now. So it's a CSR project and I'm the biodiversity consultant for it. So basically, they had already made the park, the Udaan Biodiversity Park, and that's when they realized that they would like it to be more inclusive. And the CSR head had that time just been to South Africa and she had seen a Braille garden and she wanted to bring that knowledge and kind of implement it, integrate it in this park itself. So that's when I came into the picture, and today I'll be sharing my learnings from that space. So before we start, I have a short video of Udaan Biodiversity Park. So you have an overview of what that place looks like. It's a 1.5 acre urban garden. So just give me a second. Veena, please confirm if you can hear it. So it looks like any other urban garden. And I'll just take you on the integrities of the nitty-gritties of it, of how we introduced different elements that made it more inclusive. I'll just share my screen now.
All good, Prerna, I can see it.
Yeah, and Veena, just confirm, is it moving to the next slide?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah. So today I'll be focusing on how we can create sensory gardens in the smallest of spaces, and it could be for all. The reason why I said for all is when I started this project of Udaan Biodiversity Park, I was looking at references of how to create a sensory garden. And I came across one article which said that you wouldn't want to create a separate section for children with special needs or the differently abled people, because it has to be inclusive. They are part of our society. So that was the idea, and that's why the park is created in such a way where we've integrated braille signages in the main track as well, rather than creating a separate space. So that was a thought behind it. This was the park in 2013. Like, I'm still associated with that project, and that's pretty much how it looked like when it was landscaped and handed over to me. So there were 4 lawn patches. There was one purple color plant in the the architects did a great job with the aesthetics. I think we come into the picture when we have to bring ecological value. I think that's why collaborations are so important between these two fields to create functional green spaces. So all along, if you see out here at the periphery, is where we introduced the medicinal plants, useful plants trail. So it has some 55 medicinal plants, which are touch, smell, and taste plants, because this was specifically designed keeping in mind the visually impaired. And we further there were different sections, because I was like, okay, this is such a small space, but how can we make it more educational? So, there was an eco experimental zone where we encourage community to come and do farming or different experiments. Then there was a plant nursery because people started asking for the plants at the park. So we started using milk packets, and milk packets from Zensar used to come here, and then we make all the extra saplings go here, and then they are adopted by citizens. There's a waterfall, pollinators aboard, these different features, fragrance garden, vermicompost. In a small space, we've tried to integrate about 15 biodiversity friendly features. And this is what the park looks like today. It's, as I said, it's a PMC garden. Yeah. So when we first had to have a vision of what we want to do out of the sensory space. So we wanted to make it an experiential space for all. It had to be an educational space. And as I said earlier, an inclusive space. At the same time, there was another layer of biodiversity conservation. So species that were selected, plant species, were such that were either pollinator friendly or butterfly friendly or attracted birds, native plants, rare plants. Plants that would add that layer of urban biodiversity in the garden. This is something I want to focus on in today's talk. Like, when we create a sensory garden, our users might be different with different abilities. So, we have the 5 senses that, the sensory garden should cater to, which is touch, scent, sound, sight, and taste. So I'm going to take you through some of the ideas that people have used to integrate these in sensory gardens. So coming back to Udaan Biodiversity Park, as I said, this was the periphery trail. And in the periphery trail, then we were like, we also wanted to add another layer of traditional ecological knowledge. I'm personally very passionate about reviving that knowledge, because there's so many recipes, so much information about our plants, which is just, we don't know as urban citizens. So we divided the medicinal trail into different sections. So first was fun with plants. Then second was plants used for cough and cold. Then joints, bones, aromatic, plants used for digestion, and hair and skincare. So all of these, and the plants were that we have been traditionally using, our Nanimas nuskas, those kind of plants were introduced in this space. So coming to touch, when you want to create a space for like a touch element, the various things that can be used are leaf textures. So leaves, different textures. Some are soft, some are rough. Like there's a plant called as sandpaper ficus. So it actually, the leaves feel like sandpaper. Then there's a plant called as coleus, where it is very soft to touch. Then different barks. So various textures in nature. Then the second is pathways. The textures, touch is not just with the fingers, right? It's also with the feet. So we can play around with both to create touch in sensory gardens. So this is, we had taken a trail of a blind school at Udaan Biodiversity Park, and there clearly it was written that aloe vera has spiny stems, so please do not touch it. But this boy, like I'm so fascinated by him, he stayed back. He's like, no, I want to. He was so curious about that plant. He quietly sat down. He first removed those prickly parts. He plucked the leaf. He opened the leaf. He removed the gel. He applied on his skin, and then he came very happily. And he was like just asking his other friends to touch gel on his skin. So I think such it was really amazing to see him engage with that plant. Then other is we did sapling making with the blind children. So when they had come, it was another way of engaging with them. Then some of the plants, like I was talking about coleus. So coleus is something that you can easily find in any nurseries in India. It has a very soft touch. So this is something that can be introduced. Then on the right is a plant called as Helicteris isora. In Marathi, we call it as moroshe. It's a seed that's given to kids, like the newborns. It's a medicinal plant, but you see the spiral of the fruit. So there are many such fruits with different shapes, many such seeds which can be introduced in the touch section. And this is again of Udaan Biodiversity Park, where the entrance, like on the left, you can see it's a ramp. So the ramp was created so if someone is on a wheelchair or to facilitate that. And when the park was being made, all the leaves in the surrounding, they were just stamped into the cement to create this texture. So we haven't tried this yet, but I think kids might enjoy just walking over the textures and touching it. Then the various barks, or many of our urban gardens have different trees. So if you can just explore the different barks, and that's how children can relate to plants better, or the diversity. On the right is a project that I was doing in Aurangabad. So there, what we've done is we wanted people to experience geology, like so the different rocks. So I think even rocks, they have their own texture. So just by placing them and giving a prompt, I think people can engage with them better. And this is one of the learnings for me. Well, we had already completed Udaan Biodiversity Park, and this is if you ever visit Pune, I think you should definitely go to Bal Kalyan Sanstha in Pune. It's close to Pune University. It's a school for differently abled children, and there one of the teachers has made a sensory garden. It's a beautifully done place, and what I really liked was even the map of that place is embossed like this, so the children can find their way on their own. That's something we didn't do at Udaan. I wish we would have. So I think, so my biggest learning was while doing such projects, it's important to engage with trainers or with educators who are working with children with special needs, because I think they can very specifically tell us what is it that they need, and they are more connected to children. Another learning is we had the pathway was already done. That's when someone told us that there are these different guideline tiles which give cues to the visually impaired of in which direction they need to move in. So if we knew this better, like if the architect knew, I think he would have loved to integrate that in the pathway itself. So these are just certain learnings from the project. Another thing is again from Bal Kalyan Santa, where on the floor itself they have created an embossed snake and ladder game, and behind you can see she's created like different textures, like the circle has a different tile. And then there was this very interesting game, like there were two flowers, metal flowers, on both ends of the lawn, and it was connected by a pipe below. So the child, one student used to speak from one end and the other could hear. So, just very tiny games, interesting games that were integrated here. And these textures need not be very expensive. It could be locally available material. Even the khadi, the construction sand that we get, or the normal soil, water. I think children love to engage with these elements. This is a recently launched sensory garden in Pune. It's in March 2022. What I would like to highlight here is if you look at the circle and the pathway, they've created different textures in the pathway. Like there are blocks, and there's a wooden thing, there's a gravel, then there's a lawn patch. So, and it's not a large space. Like in a small space, they've tried to integrate the touch element. And if you have a larger site, then you can even have boulders. I think like that's something that we've observed is people love to sit on these natural boulders, and then they like to touch, feel the rock. So this, and it blends well with the aesthetics as well of the place. And vermicompost, when I do these sessions, I think kids just love playing with earthworms, love touching vermicompost, and there's so much to learn even through compost. So if you have like just a matka, potted pot, you can have compost in it, and that can become an amazing tool for nature education to understand soil biodiversity. Then the second is, like we just did touch, the second is scent. So there is various fragrances that can be introduced. One is just, we all love mitti ki khushboo, right? So there can be certain patches just left barren, and once in a while they are watered. Then different fragrant flowers, aromatic leaves. When we do sensory gardens, leaves, foliage plays a very important role because people come every day to visit, schools, colleges, and flowers are not there always. So even at Udaan, that was a learning that I learned by experience, is to have more of foliage, leaf variations. So aromatic leaves that taste, leaves that smell, because foliage remains, whereas flowers, as I said, are seasonal. So this is, kids from the Blind Association, they were really enjoying, I think it was a camphor basil they were smelling. And on the right are just visitors who are again engaging with the plants. So these are certain plants that I thought, if you want, you could write down. These are stuff that you can easily find throughout the country. So one is butterfly ginger lily, or it's known as Surulu Sugandhi in Kannada. It has very nice fragrant flowers. Then the second is galangal. Galangal is what we use for Thai cooking, and the leaves smell amazing. Like once you smell galangal leaf, you can't forget the smell. Then there's parijatak or harsingal. And there are different varieties. I think you can use all kinds of basils, because every basil, there's sweet basil, there's camphor basil. Sweet basil is the Italian basil that we use. There's camphor basil, then in tulsi there are different types. So each basil has a unique smell. So you can actually, if you have a smaller space, you can definitely have different basils. And most of our homes have curry leaves, right? So curry leaves is again a butterfly host plant. It's a great nectar source. The fruits birds love to eat, and children can engage with curry patta because again it's a highly aromatic plant. Then the third one is sound. I think many of us engage with sound. So how is it in a sensory garden can you create sound? So one definitely is it's a garden. So as many nature sounds, you can encourage your group of children, of students to listen to the different sounds, try to differentiate the different sounds. Then I've seen sensory gardens with various musical instruments, even water. Like at Udaan, what we've done is we have created two water bodies. One is a pond and one is a waterfall. just to have that sound element, and also this helps in the water purification process. And in certain places, you can just have a wind chime or that different pipes giving out different notes. They really like to engage with such elements. Finally, with taste. So taste is something that I think everyone relates to, right? So you can have different edibles, right from fruits to edible leaves to medicinal plants, and it's a great opportunity to revive the forgotten foods. Like you tell the next generation that these are the plants that have been historically eaten in our country. So some are, I think you're probably familiar with these plants. Is the insulin plant? It has a very tangy taste, like imli. Then there is multivitamin plant, which is like you consume one leaf and they say it has multivitamins. And I know that in Kerala they make a sabji, a curry out of it. In Maharashtra it's not that popular, but now gradually people have started using it. Then the betel leaf or the pan that we say, peppermint, it tastes exactly like peppermint chewing gum. Then there is stevia, so we do get these stevia capsules, right, as a sugar replacement. Similarly, the stevia leaves are very, very sweet, and kids love to explore with sweet taste. So these are the, you can play around with various foliage again, and different fruits. Like we have multiple fruits at Udaan. So that, and they are planted in the area where the children go, like in the kids play area, so they can engage with them better. Then comes sight, there are, because a sensory garden caters to people of different abilities. So, and even with the blind, I realize that there are some with partial visual impairment and some with complete visual impairment. So those with partial visual impairment could still engage with the sight element. So different colorful visuals that can be created. One that we've created is of pollinators aboard and a butterfly garden, because when you create a butterfly garden, you're actually having a lot of colorful flowers, right? And they attract bees, they attract butterflies, at the same time they attract humans as well. So that's one thing. Then again, different, like leaves have so many colors. So the more visuals that can be provided, I think they can connect with the visuals much more. So this is again Udaan after 10 years, how it's become much greener now. And this is just some images of Udaan. This is how it was in 2003, and now, not 2003, sorry, 2013, and now in 2022. So all along here at the periphery is the useful plants braille trail. Now, what Venna said about the making of signages, that itself was a big learning for me, because I was doing this for the first time. People at, the entire team was doing these signages for the first time. So right from what should be the height of the boards, these are really practical things, challenges that we faced, because the park was not just for children, so we couldn't have it very short. At the same time, we didn't want it to be so tall that the children can't read it. So then we decided that it should be 3 feet above ground. Then whether the board should be straight or slanting. So we spoke to the Blind Association here in Pune, and they said you keep the board slanting, because when the children read, they like to put their weight on the board, and that's how they read the braille. So we decided to keep it as slanting. Then came the material, so we tried out 3 different materials for braille. Again, it was experiments after experiments. The first was just this paper kind of braille. This was the cheapest. We started with this on the left hand side, if you can see. You can already see that it had turned quite brown, and within a year it had started tearing. So then we moved to, we actually had to hunt a lot to find the metal sheet. So I can show you a sample. Don't know whether it's visible. So this is a metal sheet, a metal braille sheet. It was only done in Mumbai Blind Association, but now they don't manufacture it anymore. So the life of this is much more than of acrylic. So this is acrylic. This is when and all of these boards are prepared by a person who's visually impaired and who does this professionally. So he has done this and he explained it to me that if your site is indoors, then you can go for an acrylic sheet, which is cheaper. But if it is outdoors, then go for a metal sheet. And this metal sheet, like at Udaan now, it's been almost 7 years and it's been going fine. This one, we recently just powder coated it. Then another learning was when we do the signages. So, the size of it, the slant, the height. So we kept figuring that out. Then the other thing was prompts. The sensory garden I feel is actually of no value. There are no prompts or no guidelines of how to use that plant. So here you can see like it's written in green, like pluck a leaf, smell and taste it. So these prompts are given on every board. And yes, so there are these prompts on every board, and we had to again work around the prompts of how it should be. So we interview the visitors, and what is it that they can relate to, and that's how it was a complete 1 year exercise to prepare these signages. So it took that long. Then I think other thing that can be done is, these 5 things I've listed below is when someone suffers from major anxiety, that's what they say, what are the 5 things you can see around? What is it that you can touch? What is it that you can smell? So the therapist try to bring you back into your surrounding world. And I think that's what a sensory garden does as well. It helps you connect with your own senses. And as a nature educator, I think if we can give the right prompts to the group that we are leading, it can play a very important role in their experience of the sensory garden.
Prerna, 20 minutes up, just giving you a heads up.
Sure. I should be done in 5 minutes. Yeah.
Sure. You have time to know. Yeah.
Okay. So these are just, when we got the first group after doing the sensory trail, and again, it was like whether the braille should be in Marathi or in English. That's something that we were struggling with. So we again, over there, he said that most schools, blind schools in Pune, are Marathi. They study Marathi braille. So if you have it in English braille, it's not going to work. So earlier, I think we had done it in English braille, so we got it translated to Marathi braille. So I think these were really important learnings for someone like me who does these spaces now professionally. And that's how the signages, we used to be, there are about 250 signages now in that 1.5 acre garden. So, where to place them, how it should be closer to the plant. So all of those decisions were taken on site. And some other interesting features that have been introduced are the rare endemic threatened plant section. There's a memorial of extinct plants. There's a You Can Make a Difference board. And at the same time, I think sensory gardens provide an opportunity for meaningful employee engagement as well. Where, in CSR, there are many employees who would like to come and engage and, give their time. So we keep getting such groups to Udaan Biodiversity Park. And yeah, this is one incident where this is a group of kindergarten children. They were so excited just to water the plants. Like, I think that was their first experience. So even just watering plants can provide an exciting experience to children. And a hand lens. I think if you just carry a hand lens, it shows the beauty of the micro world. And different games, these are just certain smaller nature education games that we've kept at the park. It's a kit where, if a group comes, the educator can use them on site and, do these different activities at the park. Now I just want to quickly, in like another 2-3 slides, I'm towards the end of my presentation, just want to state some practical tips. Like if you want to create a sensory garden, then what is it that you should keep in mind? So the 4 most important criteria are for plants is for sunlight, planters, soil and water, right? Planters, try going for larger size planters because then the plant grows much better. For sunlight, I think wherever you plan to do, it could even be in a small backyard, it could be a balcony, it could be a terrace. It's most important to understand the sunlight. So if it's an east facing, you will get sunlight only in the morning hours. Most of the plants that are generally considered in a sensory garden should be fine in an east facing space. So you don't worry so much. West facing and south facing are when you get the afternoon sun. So if you already live in a house which gets afternoon sun, it's usually west facing, south facing. That's when the sun loving plants will do. So shade loving plants won't do really good here. So something like insulin plant won't be the best choice for a south and west facing because it is a shade tolerant plant. And north facing is the most challenging because north facing is where you rarely get sun except in the peak summer months. So north facing is when you need to choose more of, say, coleus. Coleus will do great in a north facing. Or even if you want to go for passion flower, passion fruit, it will be fine, but it won't fruit. So it can act like a butterfly host plant. It can still give those sensory cues, but it won't flower or fruit usually. So make sure you understand the sunlight before you plan your space. And remember that most plants need 4 to 6 hours of sunlight. And when you prepare the garden mix for potting the plants, it should be 70% garden soil, any garden soil. Mix cow manure with it, 20%. And 10% can be organic matter, which could be coco peat, or if you have brown leaves, that's preferable. To mix it all up first and then pot the plants for the sensory garden. And if it is a small space, say in a school where there's you want to make it in a windowsill, for example, or in a classroom, so you can do layering. Layering could be even in the same pot. So you can have multiple plants in the same pot. Like on the right is this is my pot where there's a drumstick and I'm growing a kalanchoe plant around it. So it's like using the space because even I live in a small space. And that's another, this is a herbal garden created where I'm sitting just outside. This is an older photo now, I've changed it. But this has most of the medicinal plants. This has about 20 medicinal plants, which are also sensory. So, it can be created in the smallest of spaces. That's the point I want to make. And just a quick recap of what we discussed is first to create a sensory garden of people with different abilities. It's important to understand the user group, and it would be even more impactful if you can engage closely with an educator, or if you yourself are an educator in that space. That's really great because you would know the exact needs that are required. Selection of plants can also be connecting to the syllabus. Their actual syllabus. You can choose such plants because at Udaan our experience was that many schools were coming so that they could show them interconnectedness in nature, or they had some botany syllabus that they wanted to cover. So if we can integrate it with syllabus, I think educators also find it a lot more meaningful. Then try to integrate all 5 senses. Add-ons such as seeds, handlands, nature games can be great because sometimes those plants are not there in the bed where you want them to be. And choose plants keeping sunlight in mind. Provide appropriate prompts. And yes, sensory gardens can be created in the smallest of spaces, and they provide a great nature education tool, I feel, in my personal experience. So yes, thank you so much, and I'm ready for questions.
Hi, Prerna. I just wanted to say that this was really fascinating, and thanks so much for your presentation. And I especially like the fact that you highlighted how even in small spaces, this can be done so easily. I was just curious to know if there have been teachers or groups coming who've taken some of these ideas back to their classrooms. Do you know anyone who's tried it in classrooms in Pune? How has that worked? And if you could also share, you mentioned that some people come with a clear objective that, we want to talk about this concept further or understand that further. What were some of those things they came looking for? Thank you.
Thanks so much, Roshni. So for the first thing, so the schools that come to Udaan Biodiversity Park are for children of all abilities, as well as so that's when actually we started the adopt a plant section, because visitors as well as schools were asking for the plants because they would want to take these back and plant. And whenever a school comes, whichever plant is in excess, we make the children make the saplings, prepare the saplings, and then they take back home and they plant it. And I know of one Flora White's Biodiversity Park, which is created in Madhya Pradesh. So that person has given, like, he's like, I got inspired by Udaan Biodiversity Park, and he's created that inside a school, if I'm not wrong. Yeah. So and we are very open, like, because it's a public garden. I think people can take inspiration from here and do it in their own spaces. Zensar had adopted a school, a government school in the vicinity. So there we had tried growing some of these plants in pots. So we were trying to create the same trail but in pots on the terrace. Yeah. And for your second question of when they come to the park, actually, many a time I'm not at the park when the school comes, because it's during the afternoon hours when the park is closed. It's like special permission for schools to come. But I've attended one or two of their visits, and they were either playing around with different leaves. So they'd asked the children to collect different kinds of leaves, and they were drawing them, or they were just even the vegetation plots that we do. So one college group had come, they were like making them do those vegetation plots over there. And I think because the idea is that it has to be a self-guided trail, so that's why there are so many signages. I think most of the tours that I've seen is they take the children on that trail, the teachers are reading and they explain it to the children. Yeah, so that's what it has been so far.
Thank you.
And we do a nature art event sometimes, like, once a year or something, where we invite everyone. There's an artist who volunteers, and then we decide a theme, and then it's just everyone painting together. And then once we had got this really long banner, like it was an old banner from Zen's had discarded, so we turned it upside down and everyone dipped their feet in paint, and they were like just dancing on it. So yeah, though that was a great experience.
Prerna, thank you. That was just lovely. It was just such a lovely sharing.
Thank you.
So I just had a couple of questions. One, just now when you talked about this public art thing, I mean, I wanted to share one experience we had in Goa actually, where and it was for libraries, where like there are libraries along the river, and then all the librarians come together on this huge cloth, and they all put their feet and then with their hands, whatever colors they want to dip into and create sort of, and it was like children, when adults have to do that, it was like really.
Yes.
So this community art thing is such a wonderful way of engaging, particularly outdoors, no? I mean, I think it's really beautiful. One question I had for you was, you were talking about periphery, so I was just curious as to why the periphery, in your sense. That was one question I had. And the other was, have the children sort of contributed to saying that, I mean, I was thinking when you talked about sound, I mean, we all relate so much through sound, right?
Yes.
And so when the hearing impaired, right? I mean, for them, did you get any sort of suggestions or ideas from children apart from the educators? So those were the two questions. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Radha. So the first was regarding the periphery. Basically, I got into the project at a time when it was completely done and launched. So periphery was the space where there was open space available, and it was we wanted a linear, like a continuous track where the information is not broken down. So that's why the periphery is what we focused on. But at the same time, the signages are throughout the park. But it's only the braille signages which are at the periphery, because that's where we did the useful plants braille trail. But the signages, like there's a pond in the center. So there is a signage explaining about the pond and everything. So the elements are there everywhere. This was more like, a place where it's a continuous track to walk on. That's why it was the periphery. Yeah. And regarding your second question about children we just got feedback that this is the first place where we are not stopped to pluck or eat. That's the kind of feedback that we get. They really enjoy just like, and they're very careful while plucking the leaf. They're like, oh, just take one, and they'll share the leaf. Whereas adults I've seen, they just come and uproot their entire plant and they want to take it back home. But with children, they're much more cautious. But we don't really get any feedback of what else can be introduced in the park. That's also because my personal engagement, because as I said, it's a self-guided tool. So I am not always there when the children come. So there might be feedbacks, but given to the security guard, but it's not come to me, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Prerna, I have a couple of reflections and question as well. So I was wondering, you took us through a list of plants that you thought would be useful to have for the different senses. I was wondering if, again, like Roshni had pointed out, we work very closely with teachers, school teachers and educators, and many of them, look for information that is often readily available.
Yes.
Right? Just because of the kind of pressures of work on them, and the kind of, the inability to kind of scroll through a lot of information. So often they really like it when information is there in one place. So I was wondering if you have an article that you've written where you've listed, the kind of plants that you have planted in the biodiversity park, but also other plants which you think will be useful within the context of ecology as well. Right?
Yes.
So that's one thing I wanted to also share with the group, saying that, while plants will be really nice to look at and smell at, and to smell and to touch, often we have to be careful if they can be planted in those particular places. If, sometimes they may be rogue plants, they may be plants that we don't want it to be there because they might, take over the other vegetation. So it's good to speak to ecologists before kind of planting exotic species that may be nice to look at and smell, but may not be very good for the ecology of the place. So I wanted to ask you if you have such an article, or if you don't have such an article, it'll be really nice for you to kind of put something together, and we'll be happy to put it up on our platforms, on our website, through the blog. And Radha also works with I Wonder, so and it goes out to thousands of teachers and educators.
Right.
Radha also said the same thing. So
I could definitely put, because I've not written an article on Udaan, but I have the list, and I could definitely pick and choose, plants which can be applicable to schools or spaces countrywide. Because that's an important point you mentioned, Veena. Like at Udaan as well, when I started, one section was full of cosmos. So it looked very pretty, like in the butterfly section, but we know that it's an invasive. So I had to phase it out first and then make space for the natives. And the other point I forgot to mention earlier was, one other learning was, when we started, we used a lot of annual plants. So the cost of replacing them increased. Finally, we reached a point that we have to reduce our costs. So then we started switching to perennial plants. So that was, again, I think it's very good to go with perennials, especially in sensory gardens, because people are going to touch, pluck, taste, and so perennials are much hardier that way. So I could definitely share a list with you.
Yeah, share a list, and also these insights, right? Where in terms of just giving tips to people, right?
Yes.
So and to highlight the fact that even in small places, because of many schools that we work with, especially government schools, at least a few schools in Karnataka, we've seen a very, very small space available for them, right? So to stress that even those spaces can be, made useful by putting a few plants. So even those kind of things will be very useful.
Sure.
Thanks for the presentation.
Thanks.
This is nice. Just one thought. This is something I do when I take kids on walk. So they get to taste, smell some of the plants for sure. But then when do they again get a chance to smell that? In the sense, how often do they again smell it so that it stands in the memory for long? I know there are special need kids, I understand, who can remember it very well, right? How about introducing some more commoner plants? Like it can be a mango, it can be a jamun, pluck the
Right.
leaf. Because this I do on my walks. I just pluck the leaf and ask. Even adults, for a jamun tree, for instance, I pluck it and smell and ask people, can you identify this? And then forget about kids, adults also couldn't identify. I mean, I'm just
Yeah.
saying that if we can include some more native plants, which are more common, which might encounter after you finish the walk.
Right.
It can
Right. Yes.
stay with them for a little longer
Yes.
because they're much more common. The chance of them encountering them would be higher,
Right.
and that memories, the whole experience might return to their memory whenever they smell it again. Just a thought.
Yes, that's a good point, Chandu. And in fact, then they can continue engaging with those plants even when they
Exactly.
go back. Yes, yes,
Yes.
absolutely. Sure, sure.
So maybe because I understand they're not plants, there are trees. I mean, they can go into the really big, but then there'll always be fallen leaves for you to just pick it up and show.
Yes,
You may
yes.
not touch it, but from the sensory part and the smell part, the leaves, crushing the leaves, and even lemon for that matter.
Right, right,
These
right.
three I usually see in the gardens around. They can add because that recollection afterwards.
Yes.
That
Yes.
makes the whole connection. That's what I wanted to add.
Sure, sure, sure. And here also at Udaan, like we do have a lot more plants. Like for example, lemongrass. I think that's something that people can find it easily, right? Even when they go.
Yeah,
Yes.
lime plant even.
Yes, even lime. Yeah. Right, right.
And mango. It can be small mango plant. Doesn't matter.
Yes.
But then I know after initially you might have to allow it to grow a little, but then one leaf a week, a few leaves a week.
Yeah. No, but that's a great point actually. Yes. Yeah.
That connections. That's all I want.
Yes. Yeah. Something that they can relate to.
Exactly. Later on.
Longer. Yes.
Some of the plants that they experience, they might not see again. Might not. But the chances of encountering a common plant might be much higher, better. Yeah.
Yes, sure. Thanks.
Thanks, Sanjit. Savita, go ahead.
Hi, Prerna.
Hi.
It was very nice listening to your experiences.
Thank you.
I just wanted to share one of the experience I had when some of around 15 kids visited the institute where I was studying. They were, children with special needs. Some of them were hearing impaired. Some of them had autistic. They were in the autistic spectrum, and some of them had MR. So it was a group of 15 kids who had all. And this institute, the institute where I studied, SACON, it's in a hilly area, are surrounded by forest. So we were thinking on how we were going to engage them for a 3-day camp. And the kids were accompanied with their moms and teachers, because the teachers thought it would be very difficult to handle the kids by themselves all 3 days. So the moms had also come, and they were all very worried that how are they going to take this 3 days, how they're going to manage. But then on the first day we had this early morning, we woke them up around 6 o'clock, and they all woke up, and we asked them just close their eyes and listen to the bird songs. And there was pin drop silence, and they were serenely listening to the bird calls for about 1 hour. And we used to have kids from other regular schools, who used to 5 minutes and then they'll open their eyes and they'll make all those things. But these kids were totally immersed. And on the same night, there used to come elephants used to come to have water from the nearby tank, and it was around 12 or 1 o'clock in the night, and we woke them from the sleep, and they didn't make any fuss. They just all came and they were silently watching the elephants drink the water. Nobody made a noise or disturbed the elephants. So to look at that, it was like an experience. Like, these kids are far more intuitive, and they are much aware of their surroundings more than we are. So it's just the inclusivity that we are missing out making them miss out on many things, I think.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Yeah.
But that's an amazing experience you shared with us.
Yeah. I hope you also encounter many such things in your field.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
I actually had a question to start off with. And I was just wondering, because often, even in classrooms or in any space, there's some kind of anchor, right? There's something which is a starting point for a discussion. And which is why I think even, because I'm sighted, I mean, my first go-to kind of resource is always okay, let's show them this photo, or let's show them this video, or let me use this chart. And, even the resources have to have this kind of visual depiction with this detail. And I'm just wondering, what are the various kinds of anchors that we can use in resources, right? So even we often kind of look to create anchor charts, and most of our anchor charts are visually rich, but they are not rich in the other, in other senses. So perhaps one thing to think of is to create different kinds of anchor charts, right? That provide different kinds of information. So perhaps, I mean, when you were talking about texture, I was just thinking about that, right? So, and that's something to do. But yeah, that's where I'm at right now, because I think it also requires that fundamental shift to think about what your starting point is and what your anchor is in the classroom in talking about any concept, but in nature education as well.
Yeah, that's a good point actually, Roshni. It just reminds me, like I do design gardens, right? So there was a time when I used to carry my laptop and I used to show the clients the different plants, set up the plant palette that's possible. But after that, once I just did it as an experiment, I made like these small pots of the different plants. And I just took that entire kit over there and I made her smell the different and taste the different plants. And that's how I thought that if I have to use your word of being an anchor, I thought of physical stuff is much better than something else. So even the textures, I think if as nature educators, if we can design kits of stuff like barks and different things that people can carry around, it has to be portable. Probably that might enhance the senses of the students.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I was also thinking even a sensory garden, like how is space interpreted? How is it navigated? I think those are also questions to keep asking and then designing, right? So I'm just going back to Radha's question of periphery as well. So how is that seen? Or how is that experienced? Is there a curiosity of, okay, what is there in the center? Or how do I get to the center? Or if there was something in the center, then how do I come,
right.
You showed us that bird's eye view of the park, and that was really helpful for me to see in the beginning, because then I could, as you took us through each section, I was actually able to, almost experience what you were saying. Yeah. But if I had not seen that bird's eye view, I wonder what my image of that would have been.
My experience has been with children, again, to answer what Radha had said, that they really don't want to stay at the periphery. They do want to come and they want to explore the whole space. So that's why we just leave them. It's like we'll take them on a trail, but after some time, it's like you find your own way. And most of them ended up near the water body. Like children, the security guard actually has a problem controlling children's excitement in the evenings, because they're just throwing stones or they want to jump into the water. So I think they have some fascination towards water and towards being free. You can't control them. And I think that's actually a good point. We shouldn't restrict them to any space, right? The whole space should be theirs.
Yeah. It's very true. This thing about, guided, when we talk about, because it's also the way you construct knowledge, no? I mean, in the sense that you sort of, particularly children, because as it is, everything is sort of everything is in silos in a sense. Your curriculum, your syllabus, after school work, after homework, whatever. And then suddenly you're in this open space and you're like, no, I don't want to be. I just want to go where I want to go.
Yes. Yeah.
And that allows a very different way of discovering. They arrive at things.
Right.
But I wanted to actually also go back to Suhita's point about the sound. And for the longest time with adults, whenever I used to start a workshop, and this happened over the last year a lot, I would start with sound, because like Roshni said, the visual is so powerful, and particularly now with screens and with all of that, the audio, we've forgotten to hear certain sounds, right? So with adults, and Suhita, I used to do exactly this, and I continue to do this, that ask people to close their eyes and imagine your ears are like an elephant's, and reach out to the furthest sound you can hear, and then come slowly and reach out to the nearest sound you can hear. And then can you reach a point where you can hear your breath or your neighbor's breath? And then after that, when you get them to engage, it's quite interesting to see the shifts that happen.
Yeah.
But Veena, the question that you were asking about, that you're talking about material that you may have that you wanted to. I was just thinking during the COVID, when we went so much online, right? What was happening with, and particularly visually impaired, right? For the hearing impaired, I've seen very often, because we have the National Institute of Speech and Hearing very close to our house, and you suddenly discover the value of video chats, because you can see them so animatedly talking to each other, and then you suddenly realize the power of technology in freeing you up to actually have a conversation. But I was just thinking during the time when we were all so much online, what was the, how would we engage with visually impaired in terms of just, anything? And wondering if I will be actually thinking about this.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think also sometimes, like I was thinking of the early bird posters that we have done, right, on different habitat types, and it was like an anchor chart, right, like what Roshni kind of described. It was meant for classrooms, but also to introduce people to very common birds in different habitats. That was then converted, because I think somebody did it in another country. There were calls that were added to each of these bird illustrations, so that people could also click on that bird and then hear their calls. Now, this wasn't, I think, done, from what I understand, it wasn't done keeping in mind that, people who have hearing difficulties might actually enjoy something like this. And I don't think we've even thought about it or even publicized it as such. So we may be doing things again just to increase the value of the education resource that we are creating, and not actually thinking that it might help another group of people as well, right? And so things to again keep in mind when we're designing our kind of resources and interventions, and do what we can slowly but surely, right? It can be difficult. It will be baby steps in the beginning, but I really liked Roshni's reflections and questions, and I was going back to my childhood when I remember my father, I think, had gone abroad for some work, and he brought back a book for me, a children's book. I don't know if any of you remember, but there were these books where you could lift up a flap, and if you kind of scratch it and you smell things, and it went from very nice smells to really bad smells. And I'm sighted, right? I could read and things, but this additional kind of aspect in the book of being able to smell something which was being described, like I remember they said raccoon, and so I'd lift up, and raccoon is not an animal you find in India, but just what I'd heard about these animals putting out a very foul smell, and here I was actually smelling it. It was so fascinating, and I remember I was feeling very sad because I'd used it so much that the smell had completely gone. But we often don't we don't rely on things like this, and so I find it fascinating that plants can play that role in a classroom, without us having to, and creating a smelling book resource might be very expensive for most people, right? But can we then use simple material like plants to bring out those kind of different senses, sensorial kind of appeals for people, and point it out. I remember that even with listening to bird calls in the last 2.5 years, because I've been housebound, I'm listening to it much more. I'm in the same house for the last almost 5 years now. I used to hear something, but I never used to pay attention to it, even as an ecologist, right? Because I enjoy looking at smaller things like spiders and insects. But now that if I close my eyes or if I just have to listen to all the various bird calls, I know I have 10, 15 birds singing in the morning. And that's such a wonderful kind of aha moment to go through.
It was really nice, Veena, to be part of this group today and to share the journey of mine with Udaan Biodiversity Park and to hear Sunita's experience as well. It was quite nice. And I think I would like to say that senses is something, as Radha said, sound. There are so many sounds around us. If we are just more conscious, I feel it will play a major role even in our mental health. Education and everything, I think that's a second layer. But in terms of our health, I feel just focusing on it. That's what we do in meditation, right? When we sit, we're just focusing on our senses. And for me, because I am a plant lover, so for me, like creating spaces with plants is what I live for. And when I see different groups engaging with those plants, it is, I don't know, I just feel a lot of joy. And believe me, you can create it in the smallest of spaces. You can have 20, 30 different kinds of plants, even in your small balconies, and most people can engage with it. And if you need any help in terms of choosing the right kind of plants, I would be very happy to, just do a message with you and, just help you chalk out that list. So yes, so I just hope that you can take, at least have some more plants in your home or in your educational spaces and use that as a tool for nature education as well.